Hello, welcome to September 19th, 2022. My name is Kurt, and this is my daily Good Life meditation video. I make this video every morning to record the effort of thinking about my life objectives and principles, something that I call the Good Life Creed. It's a collection of ideas that I've assembled, borrowed, uncovered, and in a few cases made up on my own that I use to help me live a better life. I don't have a ready-made human operating system. I don't abide any religion, so I don't have something that I can follow to those effects, and I don't even necessarily follow any particular philosophical school except the Stoic. But I'm very highly influenced by the Stoics. So without anything to show me the way, I was kind of left to my own devices to make something up. But like I said, if anything, if my Good Life creed resembles anything, even including in name, it would be the Stoic tradition, which I am deeply indebted to. Anyway, I make this video so that I can think about these things and think about how I'm doing applying them, namely to yesterday, and to plan for the coming day. So let's do it. First, last night and yesterday. Slept pretty good. I was awake when the alarm went off. I was thinking about work. I've got a big meeting today, several things in action. Really funny, it's not really like I've got a lot going on at work that I have to worry about. It's just that there's a lot of moving parts right now. Should be pretty good. There is some challenging stuff in the coming weeks, but nothing too bad. So anyway, that's the first time in a while that I was awake when the alarm went off. I thought I was getting on top of that, and I think I am, but nevertheless. As for yesterday, pretty good day, pretty standard issue. Yumiko and I, it was a Sunday. Yumiko and I were up. I took care of all of this. We cleaned the house. That took us to about lunchtime. Yumiko made a really nice lunch. We had lunch here. We watched a YouTube video together about the Japanese countryside living. The remodeling the old houses in Japan that we like, a series that we like. And then from there we took off and did some shopping. Yumiko wasn't feeling too good, so we did our best, and then we got home, and then so that she didn't have to cook, I went out and got us some pizza, and we had a nice evening together. It was a good day. It was a standard issue day. I like that. Maybe I'll try that. Let's begin the Good Life. First, my 7 life objectives as follows. Number 1. So the objectives, before I start, the objectives are the things that I'm striving for. These are the aims of my life. The principles are the tools that I use to get there, to achieve these aims. So the first objective of my life is to be always ready to die, to have my affairs in order, my relationships in a sound condition, and my life's work also in a ready state, so that if I were to die today, keel over with a heart attack or an embolism or whatever the case may be, I've left things in as clean as possible. The house has been tidied up. I'm wearing clean underwear, etc., etc. So how am I doing with that? With regard to the affairs of my life, as good as can be. I wish I had more money to leave my wife and daughter, but I'll leave Yumiko with a good pension and good retirement. Emily, there's still some money left in her college fund, but not much. She'd probably have to get some loans to finish off college. Yumiko and Emily would have to button down the hatches. I imagine Yumiko would go back to Japan and go back to her family. She'd be fine. Emily would be fine. She's far enough along. So yeah, I mean, again, wish I could have done better, but this is the way it could turn out. It's not in bad shape. I'm not going to leave him with any heavy debt or anything like that. Um, as for my relationships, I think those are all in really good shape. My mom has always been a challenge, but I think my relationship with her is is in the best shape it possibly could be. My standard posture with my mom is to always be with my arm out to her, wanting to engage, wanting to have a relationship with her, I remain ready and able to do that. I reach out to her every 2 weeks to see how she's doing, and if she'll see me, I avail myself of every opportunity to do so. So she's the most difficult one in terms of any relationship that I've got that I think needs work. But I think it's as much as I can do with from one adult to another. And with regard to my life's work, my book Going Alone is complete. There's a little bit of tidying up I'd like to do in one of the chapters, the chapter called The Path of Wildness. I'd like to remove some extraneous language there, but even without that, I think it's fine as is. So yeah. So I think objective number one is in a good and steady state. That's a part of this effort is to see how I'm doing, and if a particular objective is not being met, what can I do to tune my life to improve that that circumstance. So number one, I think, is in good shape, but I've always got to be working at it. The second objective is to make good and effective use of my time. This is simply an admonition to not waste time, to not let my days pass without having made good forward effort in the direction of the things that are important to me. And what is the thing that's important to me? And you notice I said thing, it's singular, not plural. It's one simple thing, working towards the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures. Well, I like to improve the well-being of as many as possible, but particularly thinking creatures, things that can suffer, things that can know joy and pain. So am I doing that? I think I am. I'm doing this largely through the continued promotion, sharing, and hard work that I put on developing this very good life creed. These 7 objectives and 32 principles are what I have distilled out of life as a working methodology to live well. And I know that it works because I apply it every day, and my life has been getting better across the last 4 years that I've been using this deliberately. I've been doing this daily since December 2018, and developing the creed and working on applying it to my life. So yeah, so that I think that I am making good use of my time, and I don't waste my time. I use my time in effective ways, either working or exercising, keeping my body fit, exercising my mind through efforts of reading, and working towards being a good husband and father, and an employee, and member of my coworker, and member of my community. That's how I try to achieve number 2. The third objective is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles. That is precisely these 7 objectives and 32 principles, which I label the Good Life Creed, borrowing from the Stoics. And I do this each and every day through this very exercise, making this video and having this little talk with myself and planning out my coming day and doing a retrospect on the last 24 hours is how I achieve this particular objective. Number 4 is the cultivation of good emotional reactions, becoming a man who reacts well to the circumstances of life, both the positive and the challenging. Not flying off the handle, not letting my emotions get ahead of my thoughts and actions, but being a steady, stable, and in control human being. Now, that's the aim. I don't always achieve that. There are times that my emotions get ahead of me. For example, last week when I got excited about that one apartment and practically signed the lease without talking it over with Yumiko, who was standing beside me, thinking, what is this guy doing? So it's a constant effort because emotions rise and emotions fall. but I do work hard at it. This is where I bring a lot of stoicism to bear, right? The stoic principles of recognizing what is and what is not within our control, and then using the sense of apathy, the ability, apathy has a bad rap in our society. It sounds like you just don't care. But in a Stoic sense, apathy is the ability to disconnect from things that are outside of our control and not let them be the motivating forces in our actions. Just like we can watch, old newsreels of the past and be kind of disengaged whether their newsreels are reporting things for good or for bad. We see them for the ancient history that they are, so to speak, and we can be affected emotionally, but it's deadened by the sense of distance and removal by the fact that we can't do anything about it. It's seen in a more objective sense. We can do that in the here and now with what's happening around us when we see what is not within the scope of our control. And we can have that same sense of apathy while still working to engage and make decisions relative to what we're seeing and learning and participating in. So yeah, I do work hard at that one. This is probably the one objective that I work the hardest at on a daily basis, because it's ongoing. As long as my consciousness is awake, I'm engaged with the world and being tempted to particular thoughts. The next objective, I think this is number 5, is the performance of good actions. This is simply a reminder to do good things throughout the day, things that are in accord with my values and that are in pursuit of the good life, the life of virtue, the life of improving the well-being of thinking creatures. And I do that at every opportunity that I can. I like to say little things, medium-sized things, and big things too. Number 6 is the recognition of true limits and true opportunities, the aforementioned Stoic idea of seeing the boundaries of the horizon and the frontier of our influence so that we know where to apply our efforts and our decision making. Things beyond us are things that we can, in essence, let go. However, though, we need to think about how our decisions might have a reverberating impact on such things. Seeing where the limits are helps to keep me focused on the things that I can actually influence, and which is a much smaller and tighter scope of decisions than might otherwise appear. As a young man, as a youth, maybe I was a boy even, I went through life thinking that my actions and decisions had consequences to absolutely everything. Boy, wasn't that a lot of responsibility to bear on one's shoulders. No wonder life can bear us down. This is also one of the reasons why so those that are steeped in Stoic thought and practice can kind of begin to feel a sense of relief in life, even in the midst of trial, like Stilbo the Stoic, stepping forth from the flaming ruins of the city where the conquering general had just destroyed everything, including Stilbo's business, his home, killed his family, everything gone. Stilbo walks out of the flaming ruins, and the conqueror asks him, what of you? And Stilbo says, I have all my goods with me. We're wearing tatters, wife dead, children dead, business destroyed, house burned. Yet Stilbo has all of his goods with him, because Stilbo recognizes, Stilbo the Stoic, that his goods are his virtue, his reason, his ability to entertain critical thinking, and be the one in control of the governing faculty. It's not a lot to own. And it makes life a lot easier. All right, the 7th and final objective is to do just one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly and deliberately and carefully, to avoid multitasking whenever possible. Although I will multitask as I'm uh, you know, trying to dial 911 while I'm running away from a charging rhino. Will 911 help with a rhino? It's worth a try. Okay, those are my 7 objectives. My life will be a good one, or is a good one, if I can abide and promote those, live according to those. So how do I do that? What do I do? What principles do I have to help me achieve that life? There are 32 of them. And by the way, when I first started this out 4 years ago, there were 5. The list continues to grow and change and refine. And the order of these 32 is very critical. I've moved them around over the years so that they line up, so that they build one from another. You'll find that a couple places there's, 2 principles go together, or 3 principles. In one case, there's even a 5er. Let's begin. The first principle is war. A reminder to myself to always be at war with myself, at war with my own beliefs, at war with everything that I hold as true. These are the things that I wish to destroy. Nothing would make me happier than to die bereft of certitude. What a good effort that would have been, as the universe is indeed chock full of mystery. Mystery being simply the things that we don't understand. And our ideas about what are going on are subject to change when more and better information is forthcoming. So if I'm spending a good life working hard at examining the world and trying to understand the world, I'm probably going to raise more and more skepticism and doubt about what I think is happening. And my ideas have become less and less sure of anything. So that war means that I'm being forced to critically examine my life and the values that I hold. So I also am going to exercise that war against anything that's proposed to me as true by anybody else. I mean, mundane claims I don't care about. I'm not going to challenge your claim that you've got a puppy, but I will challenge your claim if you want me to abide and adopt your claim that there is such a thing as an afterlife or a soul. That's going to require some discussion and some evidence. So war. That's the first principle. The second principle relates to war. This is called the principle of reason. And there are 3 sub-principles: honesty, objectivity, doubt, 4 principles, and humiliation. 4 sub-principles, that is. Reason is the tool that I use in prosecuting the aforementioned war against what I think is true and what others propose to me that is true, at least the stuff that seems important. I am honest in my evaluation, in my consideration of the facts. I am objective in looking at things from as many angles as possible, clearly and with an open eyes. I am a fierce skeptic, doubting what I hear, questioning, and never quick to race to accept propositions. And then finally, ready to climb on top of humiliation when I discover that I'm wrong, because sometimes it's tough to discover we're wrong and have to give something up. It's humiliating, but I look at now humiliation as an opportunity. It's the feeling that I have when I've uncovered that I'm mistaken, and it's a good thing. So that's principle number 2. Principle number 3 is the homunculus. In my worldview, I don't believe that I have a soul. There's absolutely no reason to think such a thing exists. If there's no soul, then I don't think that there's any afterlife. And by extension, I have no reason to think there's any God or gods or any heaven or hell. It seems that it's just what we've got in the course of our life in the here and now. Our lives, our people, our family, our friends, our mission. But what I do have, instead of a soul, is this thing that I'm operating with right now, my consciousness. It's this little light that seems to shine right here, kind of behind the forehead, between the ears, kind of up by the front, looking through the eyes. Doesn't it feel that way? So you have one too. Well, all of us do when we're alive, or when we're conscious, at least, our consciousness. I give that a label of homunculus, a very old term that refers to the man within the man. So my homunculus is trapped inside my skull. And what's key is that he's ignorant. He's limited to the information that is streaming in through the various senses. And what's more, he's mortal. He's going to go down and die with me when I die very soon, as will you. None of our homunculi will survive our death. At least no one's shown any good reason other than kind of wishful thinking, which was one of the things that faith is, that may be the case. That's not sufficient grounds in my book to believe. Again, with war and reason. The next principle, number 4, is a strange term called the Anchorhold. The Anchorhold is an old term, again, referring to a little cubby that might be created at the side of a church, kind of where they were in the past, in the Middle Ages. They would wall in a man or a woman who would be either an anchorite if it was a man, or an anchoress if it was a woman. And a little hole would be dug out of the church, and there would be a little thing they could look through. They called that the squint. And the anchorite would live in that little cell, walled in, no door, peeking out, watching the service through the squint. Can you imagine being in the church and there's a little hole in the wall and there's a little eyeball peeking out? And food would be passed through, and waste would be passed back out. And these are called anchorites and anchoresses, and their hole is called the Anchorhold, their little cell. I always picture it like the anglerfish, big old female anglerfish with a little male anglerfish attached to the side and grown into it, right? Living off of the big anglerfish. So what the hell, Kurt? Why are you talking about this? What does this have to do with anything? The Anchorhold, or let alone anglerfish. I picture my life, and I see yours as well, all human beings, as being similarly trapped, alone, but in I picture it a little bit differently. Instead of a cell at the side of a church, because I prefer, instead of looking at the contrived face of God, I instead look at the evident emptiness of the universe. And I do so by picturing a great sea and a little mountain under the sea that comes up almost to the surface and peeks out. And that's that little tippy top of the mountain is the Anchorhold. The water is churning, and the sea rises, and the tide goes down, and the wind comes, and the waves blow, and there's salt spray, and the heat, and etc. And that's you or me standing on each of our own little Anchorhold. I'm on one here, you're on one over there. There's somebody else over there. We're waving and semaphoring across the void, right? Talking to one another. Each of us ultimately quite alone in that capacity. I picture that as our circumstance. Each of us, we are trapped in that capacity. And when we eventually wind up in the sea, we're going to be dead. And slippery. The rock is slippery, especially when the storms come. And when they do come, and we weather it, and we're holding on for dear life on the rocks. That's a useful vision and idea. I picture it frequently in my own life. When I feel like I'm alone, I'm vulnerable, and ever so mortal. I see my homunculus trapped upon my Anchorhold. And I know that very soon I'm going into the sea, and that's the end of me. And I'm never coming out of that sea again. Someone else will take my place on the Anchorhold, or they'll have their own. Do as you like. It'll be curtains for me. The next principle is number 5, the principle of purpose. There are 3 purpose in my life. These are biology, to be a good husband and father, to get my genes into the next generation, and raise my daughter to successful adulthood, and then help her out before I die, and then get the hell out of the way. The second sub-principle is virtue, to live a virtuous life. Again, where virtue is defined as seeking after and facilitating the improved well-being of thinking creatures. More well-being is basically peace and happiness, not pain and suffering. 3 is the promotion and furtherance of my own life mission. So sure, we can each take on a goal and an object in our life, right? Mine has been the writing experience and the writing of the book, Going Alone, and then the resulting Good Life Creed, and then sharing that message anywhere I can. So those are my purpose. Next, number 6, is the atomic principle, a suggestion that everything is made of bits and pieces, flowing and changing and forever transforming and falling to pieces. We all are. We're all, in essence, compounds, molecules, atoms, energy. And within a very short time, each of us is going to die and be rendered back into those constituent parts to be reused by the universe in various forms, or dissipated as energy out into the universe to help heat the vacuum of space. What a curious end. Next is the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, including you, including me, including a Monday. The nature of a Monday is to be a bit of a challenge, right? I mean, it's the day. It's the day that things start. It's also filled with opportunity. It's also a day for a deep breath. And I know that. I've done plenty of Mondays. It's good to recognize the nature of everything around us and everyone around us, so that we can know what to expect of those things and those people, and to better abide and structure our day accordingly in our decisions. Number 7 is the principle called the pirate ride. Everything is made of, is that number 7 or maybe that's 8? I usually kind of start losing track after about 5. But anyway, it's the pirate ride. The pirate ride is my term to describe my idea that free will is an illusion. I don't think we're free. I think that the universe has a lot to say about our decisions, the inertia of everything that's going on around us, of all the choices of the other people, the seeming choices of other people, all of the circumstances that are happening around us, the sheer happenstance accidents of our birth and our raising and our children, the parents that we had, etc., etc. All of this stuff is molding and influencing, and we wind up being simply mere decision engines. We feel like we have volition, like we're making decisions, but really we're just making the best choice that is relative to the circumstances of the universe around us. Just like a river chooses to bend to the right or the left, not of its own will, but simply by virtue of the fact of the geology and the physics that are happening to the water as it flows down a grade. I can't prove this, but I suspect it's true. I operate with a little bit of something that I call faith, which in other circumstances, and I should probably in this one, I view as a sin, because faith is just simply believing something because you want to believe it. Resting belief upon belief, which is a circular thing. So I do that here. So I'm sinful too. The next principle is, and I call it the pirate ride because I imagine the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. And when I was a kid, the pirates seemed so real. But then you realize after a while they're just operating off of a script, electronic motors. Likewise, we're kind of operating off of a script, the script of our unfolding DNA, and the motors being more fleshy than electrical. Okay, then the next, the curious thing is there seems to be no programmer, though. The programming is the universe unwinding by virtue of physical laws, descriptive for physical laws at that. But I digress. Let's come back. After the pirate ride comes the principle of maturity. And there are, I think, 3 sub-principles here. We are mature when we are wise. We remember our past successes and failures. We have fortitude. We have the strength to do better. Wisdom, fortitude, and integrity. When we our choices are in accord with our values. That's how we become mature. It takes time. You have to get a collection of successes and failures. It's hard to get mature from the mistakes of others. And then that's why maturity tends to develop as we get older. Next comes and this is about the area where I start to need a little help. Sometimes I might have to look at the book. The social principle. We're social creatures. We need each other. Our best ends are social ends. And there are 4 sub-principles here. Um, am I doing this right? Yes. Social principle. Diplomacy, so that we can work well together to compromise. Justice, working together to seek after just ends, which again, justice is not again, this is the first time I said it. Justice is defined as what we agree to, what we decide is appropriate behavior in pursuit of well-being. I need help. I can't remember the other 2. It's all these principles and sub-principles. So all of these things are outlined in my book, Going Alone, available on Amazon or at goingalone.org. So each of the objectives and principles is listed here in the chapter called The Good Life. So the sub-principles are diplomacy, justice, and conspiracy. I forgot that. That's it. It's not 4, it's 3. So diplomacy, seeking after, I talked about that one, justice. And then conspiracy, not conspiracy like in a conspiratorial sense of the word, but conspiracy insofar as once we are in alignment, you and me, about what constitutes a justice, then we can lock arms and we're conspiring together towards better ends. It's a positive conspiracy. The next principle is public speaking, to communicate well, clearly, using good words. Have to have a large vocabulary, but then to use those words carefully, to not be to get the best point across in the best manner we can, not to be, showy or flattery. There are 4 sub-principles here. Small words, like I said. Prudence. Well, prudence is a little bit different from integrity. Remember I talked about integrity just a second ago? Where integrity is when our decisions are in alignment with our values. Prudence is the engine of making that action, of thinking about it. So we have integrity by virtue of prudent choices, prudent thinking. Prudence is something we have to keep on active all the time. If it was an application in your Microsoft Windows, it would be kept open at all times. And then there are 2 more sub-principles, rumor and gossip. Rumor is the stuff that we do when we're talking about what might happen. And we've got to be very careful about that, because sometimes we tell rumors in order to be sensational or to simply gain the favor of others. But we can trade in rumors that may not be true or maybe harmful. So I'm very careful about that, to not do that. And gossip is talking about others behind their back in such a way that we would be embarrassed if they overheard us saying what we're saying. So I try to avoid that. That's a sin. I'll be talking about that when I get to another principle called sin and damnation. So public speaking. Okay, next I'm going to get to, I remember I said some of these principles go together. This is the 5er. Temperance. Life will not go well. The horror show. That which must be borne, and the Feast of Offal. 5 principles that are really one unit. Let's talk about them. Temperance is the ability to control our consumption of all things. Our work, our play, how much food we eat, how much we drink, how much sex we have even, how much money we spend, how many kids we have, anything. The idea is simply to do things within reasonable amounts, so that we are having a manageable footprint in life. And there are 2 sub-principles. Suffering, because suffering, when we're suffering, sometimes it's telling us that we're wanting for more. And sometimes when we're suffering, it's a good thing. It means that we're exercising restraint. Like, I really like another cookie. I'm suffering because I want another cookie, but I know that, I know another cookie is not going to be right. Simple example. And then simplicity. A simple life is, by virtue and definition, a temperate life. Okay, I don't need the book. I can get through this section. Life will not go well. It won't. Things are going to happen every day. things are going to happen to me today. I'm going to be starting work in just a bit. And I'll have challenges throughout the day. I have a big project closure report, an hour of long presentation where I'm going to close out a 9-month project that I've been running. And that in front of a whole bunch of the team members, including executives. And it won't go perfectly well. It'll have speed bumps. Life didn't go well for me this week when my daughter's car broke down, and when I also had yesterday one problem with one of the dogs. He's okay now. Life will not go well. It's messy business. That's to be expected. So by reminding myself of that, I am anticipating it. The next principle is called the horror show. It's an extension of life will not go well. Sometimes life goes so poorly as to result in what would basically be horror. I mean, like Jason from Friday the 13th level horror. Death, destruction, pain, torture, suffering. These things are all real. They happen to us. It's happening this very moment across a planet of 8 billion and across a larger sphere of animals everywhere. I mean, it's just, life is really scary and terrible at times. And I'll give you one example. I usually pull some horror out of the air. I'll give you an example. Last night, Yumiko and I were watching, as I said before, a show about renewing a house in Japan. And I saw there was this one couple living out in the countryside. They had somehow a baby wild boar. They're really cute. They're only about this big, little mottled coat. Had showed up in their house, and they put it into a bucket. You know, what are they going to do with it, right? I guess they could raise it, but it's a wild boar. So what did they do? They took the little boar and they put the bucket to the edge of the forest. And Japanese woods are very verdant and green, just lush green. I mean, the little tiny thing, and just tipped it up. And the little thing crawled out. I mean, it breaks my heart, and crawled into the green and dragging its back legs. I don't know why it was dragging its back legs, and just disappeared into the green. Broke my heart. I mean, its mother's not out there. It's just going off in there, and it's going to starve or dehydrate to death. The night was coming, and I practically want to cry. So yeah, the horror comes for man and beast alike. And I tell myself this every day, and I remind myself of this so that I'm ready for the horror that's coming for me. It will come. I mean, I live on a block here about a quarter mile long, mostly senior citizens in this community. And I'm sure that, 5 or 10 of the houses in this community of 50 houses, there's horror happening tonight, today, cancer, depression, financial ruin, whatever the case may be. People, or thoughts of suicide as an escape, happening up and down the street. Likewise, everywhere throughout the city that I live, everywhere throughout the country that I live, across the planet, people are suffering gravely. That's the horror show. And that's a principle that I remember. And not just for my own sake, to remind myself of that, but also to elicit and further compassion and empathy on my side. So that's 3 so far, right? Temperance, life will not go well, and the horror show. The next principle is called that which must be borne. Borne with an E, carried. What we have to bear is the fact of the horror show and that life will not go well and all the other stuff. Life is a challenge. It's very difficult, and we have to bear it the best we can. The 5th of the Pfeiffer is something strange name called the Feast of Offal. The offal is the waste and byproduct of butchery. It's when a butcher chops up an animal and takes out all the prime bits of meat and is left with a pile of skin and bones and guts and hair and eyeballs, brains, which they can then grind up with and put into sausage, right? That's the offal of butcher's art. The offal of living is the waste and byproduct that comes out of our intemperate living, the living that we do that isn't well considered and reasoned, that doesn't have a philosophical toolkit to abide. A lot of us do not make hard work at living. We simply look for a system to abide, for a God to believe in, for a faith to follow, for a creed to call our own, without ready-made, without making the effort of thinking about it. It's tough if you just do that. If you take a system off the shelf and don't work on it, it's not there ready to use. And as a result, we get frustrated, we get upset, and we blow up. And that is the offal of our life, right? When we explode out, and it can be a violent thing at times, right? I mean, some men, in particular, might even hurt their families. Some women too might hurt their families. For me, back 20 years ago, I would contain it, smile, be upset at life. Why isn't life working out? Why isn't it happening the way it should happen? And then blow up. Now, I would never hurt anybody, but I would have an explosive moment. I've been with my wife forever, so she's seen me do that. And I would hurt her as a result, because she would have to witness this explosion, this upset of her husband, and this volatility. Now, thankfully, those days are long gone. It's been well more than a decade or more than since I've last done that type of thing, largely because of the concerted effort that I've made over the years to develop my own toolkit and my own process and to find ways to deal with it. I call this the Feast of Offal. And if you hear my tummy, I'm in need of a feast. So I better move on. So that was that one. What's after that? Is it distraction? I think that's the next one. Yeah. Two go together. Distraction, and then the principle after that is agency and the Great Indifference. Distraction is what we do when we don't want to see the emptiness of the world. Namely, when we've convinced ourselves that everything's going to be all right. Someone's looking after us. Things are going to be fine. I'll survive my death. I'll live forever. I'll see grandma again. There will be justice after all. And then when the universe gives us evidence that that may not be the case, we don't want to see that. So we cover our ears, la, 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 goodness, faith, hope, God, forever. That emptiness that I referred to I call it the Great Indifference. And the Great Indifference is something that you can see if you go alone. Namely, at least I think you can. I see it. I found it. Go alone to a deep desert moonscape. The Bristol Mountains in California are a good example. And then you'll see that the universe appears to be empty. It seems like we're on our own. So far, we haven't found any evidence of any life off the planet. And there's certainly no reason to think that any gods exist. The usual reasons that we give for those are things like faith, claimed personal relationship, and the testimony of a family and friends, and deep tradition, and the dogma and authority of a church-like organization and a holy book. These are not good reasons to believe. These are contrived reasons. These are reasons that are anecdotal. These are reasons that are comforting, not sufficient for someone that really wants to know what the heck's going on in the world. If we really look at the world objectively, it appears that we're on our own. So we distract ourselves. Again, distraction is the thing that we do so we don't have to face down the apparent emptiness of the universe, the fact that we seem to be alone, and the fact that we're not immortal and that death will be forever. The next principle is called the best seat in the house. To try to be all right with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing right here, right now, right where I am, while all the while striving to do better. It's a strange thing to be satisfied and comfortable where I am while seeking after a new and more interesting. Sometimes it's not that it's better, but it's just different, something new. Like Yumiko and I like to mix it up. Like we're okay where we are right now, but we're looking for a new place to live because we like the adventure of trying new houses out. It's one of the benefits of not being homeowners. We can mix it up. The next one is again, I think this is 3 or 4 that go together. The Restless Man, the Path of Wildness, the Great Life Adventure. 3. The Restless Man a lot of us feel kind of a restlessness that comes in our 20s. And that restlessness, I think, comes from our hunter-gatherer past, when we were kind of motivated, particularly young men that were the hunters, to go off over the mountain into new territory, to find new game, new water, and new people to trade with. We still have that inside of us. We're only 100,000, less than 100,000 years removed from those days, far less than that. And today, when we feel that restlessness, we can assuage that by doing it. If you don't do it, it tends to linger and trouble you all your life. Some people don't seem to be bothered by this. Women less so than men. If we do make the decision to do something about it, then we're stepping onto what I call the path of wildness, which is a way forward into a new, and through and toward into through and beginning a new life, what I call a great life adventure, which is something new and different that we can then add a little feather to our hat. You can have one big great life adventure, or you can have a bunch of them. The men and women that went off to World War II and survived came back with a great life adventure. Some of them they don't want to talk about. Some of them they literally wear it on their hat. It became a centerpiece for their lives, and for many of them, it satisfied them all their lives, being the stories of the war. I remember that generation. Others that might have to contrive and make them up on their own. It's a part and parcel of what it means to be human. And it's also something more so, I think, for men than women. Although women certainly do feel it too, at least relative to the number of core people who have contacted me over the years since I've been doing these, making videos on YouTube about adventure. So that was 3. I kind of mixed them all together there. The Restless Man, the Path of Wildness, and the Great Life Adventure. Next is, what is it, the Season of Philosophy? Oh no, the risk of avoiding risk. There are 2 broad categories of risks in life. The surface level risks are the safe and sane stuff. Getting an education, finding a good job and starting a career, finding someone to marry and settle down with, having kids and a family, and saving for our old age and retirement. I call that the surface level risks, not because they're easy, but simply because they're basically universally supported across cultures, across every family is going to support you. No one's not necessarily going to push back on any of these things, right? And there's whole institutions set up of banking and schools and churches and all that stuff set up to help you with all this stuff. The tricky one is the deep level risk. The risk of finding oneself, of going out and having experiences in the life that help us to develop our character, to make us someone that has a story, a great life adventure. I recommend it if you're someone that is curious about that deep risk, that you attend to it when you're young, when you don't have anything. There's nothing to lose. You can recover. You have a whole life ahead of you to recover. You're stupid, so you're likely to make more stupider than you will be later in life. You're less mature. You're likely to make mistakes, because it's really the best stuff that comes out of the mistakes. The tricky thing is to do both, the deep and the surface level stuff. Very few people can do both successfully. I haven't been able to. I've spent most of my time on the deep risk, to very good ends. I have a lot of great life adventure capital in my life, but I don't have much in terms of the other stuff. Okay, and then that's the risk of avoiding risk. And the next is sin and damnation. It speaks to 3 broad categories of sin in life, which is basically being untrue, being a liar, believing things that are untrue, being a fool, and gossiping, which is just a bad, nasty thing to do. Specifically, and you can look this up in my book if you want more details about the specifics, there are 7 of them. Falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, dogma, authority, and gossip. All of those things are sins that lead to damnation, not in an afterlife, but in the here and now. Look at the time. I better finish up. I'm going long. The Season of Philosophy is a time to record what we've learned along the way in life, and so keep a pen and paper ready, because the muse will strike, especially if we've lived a good and diverse life, especially if we've had some great life adventures along the way. You'll have something to say. If you haven't had any great life adventures, you might not have much to say, or at least not very much interest. And then the bullseye aim. Reminder to shoot for the mark, but remember we're probably going to miss on most of the time. Sometimes we're going to miss the target altogether. I got to keep that in mind as I go into my meetings today. Next is the uphill climb. Life is an uphill trudge. I don't need the book. I can get through the rest. Trudge, trudge, trudge. Up, up, up. Every day, making it an effort to be a little higher than I was yesterday with a greater vista of life, like climbing Mount Fuji. Then arena and utility. Life is an arena for the execution of our objectives and principles towards our goals. Keeping these principles handy by remembering them on a daily basis, as I'm doing right now. Then comes nothing is enough. A suggestion beyond temperance towards abstinence, suggesting that we can get by more and we can get by better if we lay more store in the treasures that reside in our brain, our good self-control, good and sound values, strong capability to apply apathy to the things that are not within our control, and to have a good purpose and meaning in our lives. As I said, for me, that meaning is working towards furthering the development, furthering virtue, where virtue again is defined as the improvement of the well-being of thinking creatures. And then lastly, and if we have less stuff, then we have less stuff to distract us away from those mostly cerebral aims. Although the cerebral, in fact, in many ways, but practical and very down to earth in practical terms, clean drinking water being one, for example, good education, improved communications between the nations, the races, the sexes, etc., etc. The list goes on. It's all very practical stuff. Lastly, the principle of fun, a reminder to seek after having a fun life today, in the moment of now, doing things that are fun. Well, of course, taking care of the practical stuff first. Also, looking forward, enjoying an anticipation of the good times to come, like Emiko and I are enjoying so much our plans for our return to Japan and the retired farmer life we're going to live. And then also the enjoyment, the fun of retrospect, of looking back at the good times in the past, the things that we've done, looking at photographs of time with our family and our friends, and the adventures that we've had, and keeping those more close at hand and warming our heart. We did it. We got through the Good Life Creed. 7 objectives, 32 principles that I use to live a better life and to help me to have a life that is filled chock full of meaning, of ambition, of purpose towards living a life that I can be proud of, and to be ready at all times to wink out and die, and having left behind some bit of ripples to carry on while I'm gone, which will slowly fade, having left the world at least a little bit better for my presence and my time here. Thanks for joining me. Be safe, but not too safe.